Well, isn't that a pretty sight? Those waves slowly climbing up that sand just to wear out 3/4 of the way up there to Boggy Clffs. Beautiful, isn't it? Well, that's the shoreline of Wales. All cliffs, caves washed into the rocks by waves for thousands of years. And it's a part of our Pollard heritage. The Pollards were part of the Welsh who had been there, the Welsh say, for 9,000 years, shortly after the melting of the Ice Age. They had lived there before the 30,000 years of Ice Age, when the whole continent was covered with 100 feet of ice, or a mile of ice. Down, and we don't know how many times it's been changed. Christian religion says that the Jews knew that the earth was only 6,000 years old. Well, I find that hard to believe. So I think the Jews kind of got messed up there, and it's never been changed. I don't know. Who the heck knows? But anyway, the Pollards came out of Wales. They were Welsh. And in about 100 AD after Christ, the Romans invaded Wales, and after long, hard-fought battles, which nearly wiped out some of the legions of the Romans, they finally conquered Wales and the Welsh. Well, that was a tough battle. I don't think there were any Pollards before they landed. I think they brought that name with them. They called the people who pollarded trees Pollardos or Pollardides, depending on what part of Italy the name came from. So when the Romans invaded, obviously some of them were probably Pollardides and some were Pollardos. Out of the top of the tree, so they cut them off while they were still small enough to be arrows and made arrows out of them. Well, in the earliest years, according to what the Welsh say, they made stone arrows. It was the Stone Age. They were living in caves and they were making stone arrows. The other thing they could use them branches for was making boats. They formed the frames of round boats. Now, round boats was a little hard to paddle, but it could float down river, and the farmer could put his crops in that one and half a dozen others, and he would float down river with the others with nobody in them but whatever he was growing. And because the boat was round, when it got over close to shore and it touched the rocky shoreline of the stream, it would turn it would drag on one side and the boat would turn and it would roll down the side of the riverbank all the way down to the mouth of the river where products were being hauled away in boats, in these boats sometimes. Other parts, England, Ireland, Scotland. And they were working their way into the Mediterranean, where they could sell to the Mediterranean European states, and also on to the other side of the Mediterranean, where they could sell their products to the cans washed into the rocks of waves for thousands of years. And it's a part of our Pollard heritage. The Pollards were part of the Welsh who had been there, the Welsh say, for 9,000 years, shortly after the melting of the Ice Age. They had lived there before the 30,000 years of Ice Age, when the whole continent was covered with 100 feet of ice, or a mile of ice. And but we don't know that, you know. I mean, that's a story that's been handed down, and we don't know how many times it's been changed. The Christian religion says that the Jews knew that the earth was only 6,000 years old. Well, I find that hard to believe. So I think the Jews kind of got messed up there, and it's never been changed. I don't know. Who the heck knows? But anyway, the Pollards came out of Wales. They were Welsh. In about 100 AD after Christ, the Romans invaded Wales, and after long, hard-fought battles, which nearly wiped out some of the legions of the Romans, they finally conquered Wales and the Welsh. Well, that was a tough battle. I don't think there were any Pollards before they landed. I think they brought that name with them. They called the people who pollarded trees Pollardos, or Pollardides. I don't know what part of Italy the name came from. So when the Romans invaded, obviously some of them were probably Pollardides and some were Pollardos. So what that meant was they just cut the branches off the trees up about 10 feet up. They cut all the branches off. They drilled holes in the side of the trees. They stuck some branches in the side, pointing slightly upward like that. Well, out of the top they sawed the trunk off, and out of the top of the trunk grew more branches, smaller. The branches coming out of the sides, curving upward, made bows. They had figured out what angle to go down in, so that the branch would curve upwards like that to meet the sun and collect the sunlight. It would be the right curve for the bow. They can adjust it at speed. But the arrows grew perfectly straight up to meet the sun out of the top of the tree. So they cut them off while they were still small enough for the arrows, and made arrows out of them. Well, in the earliest years, according to what the Welsh say, they made stone arrows. It was the stones. They were living in caves, and they were making stone arrows. The other thing they could use their branches for was making boats. They made the frames of round boats. Now, round boats was a little hard to paddle, but it could float downriver, and the farmer could put his crops in that one and half a dozen others, and he would go downriver with the others with nobody in them but whatever he was doing. And because the boat was round, when it got over close to shore and it touched the rocky shoreline of the stream, it would turn. It would drag on one side and the boat would turn. And it would roll down the side of the riverbank all the way down to the mouth of the river where products were being hauled away in boats, in these boats sometimes, other parts, England, Ireland, and Scotland. And they were working their way into the Mediterranean, where they could sell to the Mediterranean European states, and also to the other side of the Mediterranean, they could sell their products to the, well, isn't that a pretty sight? Those waves slowly climbing up that sand just to wear out 3/4.
From the land of storytellers, this is the story of the land itself and of the peoples who've shaped it. It's majestic, it's thrilling, it's a story that tells us who we are, where we've come from, and where we're going. It's a tale that's been 30,000 years in the making. It shows our country in ways we've never seen it before. From the Ice Age to the Information Age. This is our story, the story of Wales. To begin at the beginning, we need to come here, to the western end of the Gower Peninsula, and we need to take a walk along the cliff top. We're following a path taken by a geologist back in 1823. William Buckland scrambles down to a cave you can only get to at low tide. Inside, he finds the bones of a single human being, stained by a red tint. He thinks they may be those of a Roman prostitute. And he gives her a name that sticks, the Red Lady of Paviland. But the real tale is a little different, and it starts 30,000 years ago. Our story begins in a time when these cliffs are a ridge above a river plain, and the sea is more than 50 miles away. The earliest truly human occupants of the land we know as Wales are burying one of their dead. With the body, they place ivory rods that they've carved from the tusks of mammoths and other treasures that will lie undisturbed until Buckland finds them 30,000 years later. A mammoth skull and a necklace of seashells. But the person they're laying to rest isn't a woman, as Buckland thought. He's a young man in his 20s. His is the earliest known human burial in Western Europe. The loss of a single human life counts for something even back then. The Red Lady of Paviland does seem very distant from the story of Wales and the Welsh as we've come to know it. And yet the way we think of that single life and death can set the tone for the whole of our history of Wales. One version of our past would see these people as sad and isolated in a dark space of their own. But I'm determined to remind us that they're much more connected than that, sharing a whole way of life with others across an entire continent. That's how they know that this special pigment, red ochre, will stain the bones of the dead. And that's how they know that this is the way to honor the dead, burying them with beautiful things they've made. These people are tough. Soon they'll be facing the challenge of huge climate change. Surrounded by mammoths and rhinos, hyenas and lions, these Stone Age hunters know how to fight to survive. So as we trace our ascent from cave dweller to modern citizen, I want us to keep in mind that Wales has always been home to people who take their chances at the cutting edge of change. People who are open to new ideas and find ways to move forward without forgetting to honour those who've gone before.
The story of Wales is the experience of each and every one of us in Wales, of anyone who's ever lived in this country, from the Red Lady of Paviland, buried in this cave on the Gower Peninsula tens of thousands of years ago, to you and me today. We are all part of the story of Wales.
The climate changes. People are driven away from Paviland and everywhere else in Wales. A wall of ice 40 metres thick comes as far south as the Gower. For thousands of years, the whole of Britain is deserted. Eventually, the melting ice begins to shape the coastline we know today. The great thaw brings back plants and animals. People follow slowly. The trees grow, an ancient forest stretching across much of what we know as Wales. There are just a few gaps in the woodland where the deer eat out glades or people set fires to make clearings. About 6,000 years ago, agriculture reaches Western Britain. The farmers begin to clear parts of the forest to grow primitive wheat and to keep sheep and goats, cattle, pigs and dogs.
Gradually, over the course of 1,000 years, the people who live on this land, the land we call ours today, start to adapt. They start to cut through this vast natural forest and start to tackle the challenges of the world around them.
This is the age of the great religious monuments like Pentre Ifan in Pembrokeshire. They bear witness to cults of the dead and fertility rituals. These people are farming and thinking about the meaning of their lives. Bryn Celli Ddu on Anglesey. The tomb's passage and chamber are perfectly aligned to receive the first rays of the midsummer sun. So these are people who understand the changing seasons and the spinning earth they live on. And we know, because of the distinctive way that they decorate this monument, that they're trading goods and ideas with communities as far away as Orkney and Portugal.
The people who inhabit this land are making some big statements. Here in Wales, we've discovered the largest timber construction anywhere in Europe from that age. Thousands of trees are cut down in order to build it. And it tells us that these are people with complex needs. People who want to make their mark on the world.
The Hindwell enclosure is long gone, but from the post holes left behind in the soil, we can imagine how it dominates the Stone Age landscape. It covers almost the whole valley floor. You could fit the Millennium Stadium inside 8 times over. The wooden posts, more than 1,400 of them, stand 6 meters tall. And it's all built with stone and wood tools. There are other signs of ancient human settlement all over the Walton Basin, but it's the enclosure which sends a message far and wide. Here are people who've organised themselves on an epic scale. The enclosure isn't a defensive wall, and a space this big isn't for penning animals. Experts believe it's used for feasts and celebrations. 100 generations later, you can still see the curved footprint of its perimeter, determining the path of this country road as it crosses the basin. Just a few centuries after the building of the Walton Basin enclosure, the world changes. Humanity emerges from the Stone Age.